Hello Copic fans, Michelle Houghton here with Copic in the Craft Room. One of the classes I taught this year was a standard certification and intermediate certification in Atlanta, Georgia. And those ladies had specifically requested to give a review on Copic in the Craft Room of all the tips and tricks we went over using reds. They felt like they just needed more information, maybe a second video. So that is what we're doing today. I'm not going to complete this entire image. I'm focusing in on those tips that we learned in class about using reds and being more effective with that. The image I'm using today, though, so you know, is from Stampendous. And I'm not sure if I have on here yet. Bouquet for You. It's kind of a fun set. It's got these little jars and a couple sentiments. It's got the stems that you can put down through the jar if you want to, but real cute little set. I've used it a few times now and I like the options it has. But I'm going to focus in on this flower and specifically the petals. And I have two copies stamped here. And what we're going to do, I'm not going to change your colors, but I'm going to change the order that I color things in. So I'm going to start with my first one and I'm going to color the kind of the standard way we teach everybody to color, which is from light to dark. I'm going to start with my lightest colors, work to my darkest colors. Couple things to point out about working with reds before we start coloring. One is that I am working on an absorbent surface. I'm not working directly on a craft mat or a slicker surface. I have something absorbent underneath my work, and specifically this time it's just a piece of cardstock, scratch cardstock. You can see I've scribbled on the side. I'm trying to work on a clean space though, so that I'm not pulling up anything through my paper. I can work on something even more absorbent when working on reds. You can work on a soft, like a paper towel or a tissue layer, and that's going to help pull that ink through versus letting it bleed outward. It's going to pull it down through the paper. The next thing is going to be the paper that I'm working on. Those are the first two things and don't really have anything to do with the actual technique of coloring. This is Express It blending card, the letter X, and then Press It blending card. To me, this is a very tight, smooth surface. It's a very hard surface, so it's not going to bleed as much as some of the others. Now, it will take a little more work to blend, and so you have to play with that a little bit. But for reds, the fact that it has a tighter, it doesn't bleed out. It's a little bit tighter. It holds that ink in place a little bit better. To me, that's a big advantage of a paper like this. You play with it, do some of that experimenting where you've got 2 or 3 images or even just plain circles on different papers and find what's going to work best for you. So I'm going to get close on in, and the things we're looking for is how much ink I'm putting on the paper, because I'm not necessarily going to follow the general rules. How I'm blending, what type of stroke I'm using, how close to those edges I get. Those are the types of things we're going to talk about. And as I color, I'll talk you through those things. I'm just going to voice over those so it is nice and clear, and I can think myself through. So I'm starting with my lightest red, R21. I'm putting a very light layer. I'm not saturating the areas. I'm not going down to the bottom edge of each petal. Those are the areas that are going to get dark. So I'm actually going to leave those white to start. Check the back. You can see there's still some blotchy white areas. R24 is my first midtone. Again, I am not going down to those deepest shadow areas. And look at those light flicks of color. No circles here. R29 is next. It's going to be the first kind of my shadows. And this one is finally where I go up to the edge of my line. Again, very light flicks, no circles yet. I'm really keeping the ink extremely light. R59 is my darkest color. It's going to go right along the edge, little tiny flicks, just right in those creases to get those set back and add dimension and contrast. Now I'm going to work in reverse, R29. Notice instead of doing kind of circular blending, I'm doing a flicking to pull that color. Part of working this way, R24 is next, part of working this way, I'm only working in that small section so these colors will blend together super easily. My last color is going to be R21,
That's the hardest one to blend in. So I am going to do a little bit of a circular stroke here at the top edge of those petals, but because I've put so little ink down, it's going to work. I'm not going to bleed out a whole lot, even if I bleed out just a little bit, but I'm going to get that top edge softened up. That's going to be the hardest transition point for this petal.
Hopefully you can see I did pretty good. I have one little spot over here where I bled out just a tiny bit, but hopefully you could see all those pieces of using flicks, using less ink, staying away from the edges and the areas that were going to be darker because I knew there'd be a lot more ink there. Now I'm going to change the rules completely. I'm going to start on a second rose, and really we're keeping this simple today. I'm not completing any of this because I do want to just show you these pieces and refresh your memory on some of those tips. So here's the second image, same exact image. I'm going to work on this same exact area, but I am going to do something different. I am going to work from dark to light, exact same color groups, but I'm going to start with those darkest colors and lay in the shadows first and then work to my lights. So I'm blending as I go. I'm not going to come back and step through. It's the blending is happening as I go. So it will look different. This is working with reds is one of the few times we personally and the team of Copic instructors will encourage you to try to work in reverse like this. There are artists out there who do it all the time and they do amazing work. But from the Copic team at Imagination International, we typically do light to dark. Today, for red, we're going to go dark to light.
So now I'm starting right in with my deepest color, that R59, and I'm starting right along that bottom edge. Because this is my darkest color, I do want it up against that bottom line, but I'm only going to take it as far as I want that R59 to go. So it's a very small amount of color that I just flick in. Next is the R29, so I'm going to overlap this. It's going to start about halfway down on the R59 and flick upward and outward from that. It's going to blend as I go, and that's the trick to using dark to light. It's going to allow me to use a lot less ink. R24 is next. You can see this happening. It's actually blending as I flick. Again, I started on the 29 and flick upward into the white. It's going to blend across that edge, and so I already have a nice blended edge. The R21, same situation. This is going to be my hardest blend, so I'm actually working a little bit from the top edge down into that R24. I'm flicking, and I will have to do some circling on this layer. Again, this jump between the R24 and R21 is the hardest of the jumps I'm making. So it takes a little more work, but it's still going to work here in reverse. I might have to go back, but notice I am going back on a petal after it's had a few seconds to dry and not forcing it while it's wet.
So side by side, very, very similar. The one that I started with dark ended up a little bit darker, but I just took my darks a little further. A lot of people who have had a painting background like this technique because what it feels like is pulling those colors with their paintbrush or a water brush like you would with watercolors. So that's a technique that feels comfortable to a lot of people. This is a more traditional Copic technique, working from light to dark. They both will work. It kept me inside my lines pretty well on both. I don't know that you're going to see a huge difference. Again, this is still wet, and so it's appearing a little bit darker, but neither one are super saturated with ink. I've kept that really light to keep those reds tightly inside the lines. I hope if you continue to have questions or need a review on information that you've gotten in one of our classes, that you will post those either on our YouTube or also at Copic in the Craft Room, our Facebook page. I am always looking for suggestions and need to know what you guys want to learn about or want to hear about, because that is what I'm here for. In the meantime, I hope you have a great time coloring and have some time to do some crafting and practice your reds. Enjoy your week and have a happy, colorful one.